everyone, welcome to another episode of UFO-Chats. Today we're going to talk about the Allagash alien abductions. I actually just recently did a podcast episode about this with new STRANGELAND podcast. If you don't follow them, definitely give them a follow. The link to the episode will be in the bio, and their @ is right down here. You can follow them on Instagram, they have a Twitter, and they also have a YouTube page as well. But we're back to original topic. We're going to talk about the Allagash Abductions. So this happened in 1976, just a couple years after Benny and Barney Hill, and a couple miles north in Allagash, Maine. And in this story we have 4 men who claimed they were abducted by aliens. So let's get into it. Okay, so August 20th, and that week surrounding August 20th in 1976, 4 men went camping in and around the Allagash waterways in Allagash, Maine. And we had Jack and Jim Weiner, Charles Foltz, and Charles Rack. And it's really funny to me because there's like twins and then also 2 dudes who have the same name in this like little friend group. But they all went camping together, and they, from that camping trip, claimed to be abducted by aliens. And so this claim kind of started like right off the bat of their camping trip. The first night they were there, they claimed to all see this weird anomaly in the sky, this light anomaly, of like a circular UFO that glowed as bright as the sun, and it was, kind of orangey and like just didn't quite look right for something to be in the skies of Maine. The following day, the men actually reported their UFO sighting to a park ranger, who kind of brushed them off a little bit and told them that it was probably just the lights bouncing off the sky from the grand opening of a hardware store 75 miles away, which we all know that's not what it was. But what's interesting is that there were other people also camping in that general area, and they too saw the lights. So I'm going to go ahead and say it was probably a UFO and not a hardware store grand opening. That's just me though. So it was on the first night that the men were supposedly abducted by aliens. Nothing like too crazy happened. It was more they experienced some time loss, and the majority of the story that we're going to focus on is the after effects of it, and you will see why in a few moments. But basically they kind of reported some time loss. They went out in their canoe to go fishing, and at this point it was like, around 9 p.m. It's getting dark, so they set up a fire on the shore so that they would have sort of like a beacon to go back to of like, hey, our stuff is here, that's where we're gonna head to. And they set it up so that it should have burned for upwards of 3 or 4 hours, so that they could be out fishing and not have to worry about finding their way back in the dark. But by the time they got back, the fire was completely out, and to them it felt like only an hour or 2, but it was more than that. So we're gonna skip forward a little bit because the initial claim of alien abduction did not happen until years later, and I will tell you why that is. Because they all forgot. No, I think it's more that they probably all repressed the memories of it, because I'm sure, I've never been abducted by aliens, but I'm sure it's probably a traumatic experience, at least to most people, or some, or none, I don't know. But they kind of all repressed this memory of this abduction, and it was not re-triggered in their brains until years later when Jim Weiner actually fell, hit his head, and he started having seizures. And around the time that these seizures started, he started getting these vivid flashbacks of this encounter with these weird, I believe he said 4-fingered beings. They don't have thumbs. Well, they might have thumbs, but 4 fingers, with like almond-shaped eyes that moved very like lazy, if that makes sense. Like they kind of like were very relaxed in movement. And he started having these vivid memories of this encounter with these beings and like being tested on and being probed. And he talked to his friends about it, and they were like, well, I don't know about that, but let's talk to somebody. So, shortly after Jim's fall and his sudden influx of memories regarding this alien abduction. The group, all four of them, Jim, Jack, his name's Jack, right? Yeah, Jack, Jim, Jack, and the Charleses, one of whom we'll call Charles Rack. We're going to call him Chuck. So Jack, Jim, Charles, and Chuck all went to see renowned ufologist Raymond Fowler, and to talk about what they had thought they experienced. And Raymond Fowler actually suggested that they try hypnotic regression therapy, which, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially when they kind of like hypnotize you to try to bring back some memories that you had repressed. And it's a really interesting technique. I think it's really cool. I would, no, I'm gonna say, I was gonna say I would love to do it, but I don't actually know if I want to know what my brain has repressed on me. So anyway, they go and do this hypnotic regression therapy, and 3 out of 4 of them had the same memories of this alien abduction. And they all kind of recounted the same kind of story. Before I go too far with this, Nikki, Carissa, and I, Nikki and Carissa are from New Strangeland podcast. We all talked about this the other day, and there is always the possibility, Nikki had brought this up while we were talking about it, there is always a possibility that it was kind of coaxed out of them, right? Like, if you, I'm trying to think of the right word. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. But, you know, Nikki had brought up a point of, you know, this hypnotic regression therapist may have kind of planted the idea of like, oh, like this, the first guy says, oh, we saw all these beings. The second guy, he goes to them and says, okay, what did the beings look like, to kind of coax this, you know, memory out of them that might not be real. And that's a valid point to bring up. And I definitely can understand that being like playing a part in all of this, but also, you guys know me and I like to believe everything is true. So I'm just gonna go ahead and live in my little fairy tale world of they definitely got abducted by aliens. And I'm gonna tuck that really good point that Nikki made just like really deep in my head. If I did like this hypnotic regression therapy, I'm sure you'd probably find all of these good points that my brain is like, no, we're gonna pretend it's real. But anyway, they start doing this therapy, and then 3 out of 4 of them, everybody but Chuck, kind of has the same memory, or at least a similar memory. You know, everyone's perceptive of what like actually happened is a little bit different, but they all have the same general memory, except for Chuck. And Chuck went along with it and kind of just like, he kind of lied a little bit and was like, oh yeah, totally, like I remember that, like yeah, for sure, like the aliens and stuff, man. Because he thought that down the line they would end up making some kind of money for this encounter. And that was his whole thing, was that he stuck with this thing that he did not believe for a long time because of the financial gain. And now I must ask, why do people think they're going to get money from being abducted by aliens? I don't know. I don't know. It's not something I would ever think. I would think, oh, I'm gonna go get hit by a city bus or something. That will give me money. But being abducted by aliens does not seem like something that guarantees you financial gain. And to me, it's definitely silly that Chuck went along with it for so long, for the sake of gaining money that he did not end up gaining. So there are a couple of things that I want to bring up, specifically about Chuck, aka Charles Rack, the man who did not really believe that they were abducted, because there are some things about his skepticism specifically that kind of don't really match fully. And I think it's interesting and I want to talk about it. So first of all, when they went and talked to the park ranger about the UFO that they saw, Charles Rack argued with the park ranger about it being a hardware store light, because he definitely believed that it was a UFO, which is interesting to me because, I don't know, I feel like it's confusing because I want to know why he doesn't I don't know. I'm just going to continue on because my brain just shut off in the middle of a thought. So we're going to ignore that that happened. And instead, we're going to talk about the fact that when Charles Rack, Chuck, our friend who does not believe, he like half believes. He's like a half believer. He believes that the aliens were there, but he does not believe that he was taken by them. Whatever. Maybe they just didn't take him. Maybe they left him. Maybe that's why. Maybe they just didn't abduct Chuck. Maybe they're like, this guy's going to be a dick about it, so we're not going to take him. Anyway, so he actually was interviewed later on in life and told them that they saw a UFO 3 separate times throughout the course of their camping trip. 3 times! Because they went camping for like 10 days. So over the course of those 10 days, they saw a UFO 3 different times. And he described it the same way every single night. He said every night that they saw it, it looked the same as it did the night before. And it did a similar thing, like a similar like movement in the sky. And it wasn't all in the same place because they were at these big waterways and you can kind of go in a bunch of different spots. But yeah, he said that they basically saw the same thing 3 nights in a row. And then they didn't see it anymore and like nothing weird happened after that. But this is the part I've really been dying to get to because since I did this research, it's been on my brain and I think it's so silly and I just want to talk about it. So the biggest point that Chuck made to try to discredit maybe not discredit, but the biggest point that he made in order to say we did not get abducted by aliens was he tried to say that there was an issue with the way they experienced time loss, which is funny to me because I don't know how he could think that. So time loss as a phenomenon, as we all know, is that there's just a chunk of time missing and you have no recollection of what happened in that period of time. And that's how time loss and missing time and stuff is explained, is that, you suddenly it's been an hour and you have no recollection, you have no memory whatsoever of what happened. But, in the case of Betty and Barney Hill, they were driving and 2 hours went by while they were driving. And like physically they were about 2 hours away from where they were when, the time loss, like, and the missing time kind of hit, right? So they were like, it made sense, like, physically, but they had no recollection of driving that much highway. So, the chunk of time that they didn't experience, I guess, was still valid in the way that we tell time, right? So, like, it's still, like, time still moved the same way that the way that we perceive time to move. But, and like the physical aspect of it, like their car did keep going, but there's a chunk of time that's just wiped from their memory. And it's the same thing here, where like they went out on the canoe and a whole chunk of time was wiped. And the reason that, like the way that Charles Rack tried to explain that the time loss and the missing time didn't line up correctly was that he said that the fire was not as far burnt as it should have been for how long they were supposedly missing. Which that doesn't make any sense, first of all. That's a statement that is just confusing and weird. But second of all, the fire was out, right? And they set this fire, they stoked it up to be going for 3 or 4 hours so that they could be out on the beach, or out on the lake rather, and fish and not have to worry about finding their way back in the dark. So they went and, kind of missed this huge chunk of time, and then they're suddenly, conscious again, we'll say, and the fire is out now. And he tried to kind of use that as a reason to explain that they didn't get abducted. But I think that makes it seem more like they definitely got abducted, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the ways that he tried to explain and write off this abduction just didn't really make any sense. And like, I don't know, I'm gonna go ahead and stick with the theory that my brain just came up with, that maybe they just didn't take him. You know, maybe they took his 3 friends. They took Jack, Jim, and the other Charles, and maybe they just didn't take him. But, you know, he experienced the same time loss because it was still an encounter of some sorts, right? Like, we've all seen the X-Files. Like, they drive through a spot that has weird activity and they lose 3 minutes. Like, you know, it's still some sort of an encounter, so the missing time can still kind of fit in there. But I don't know. That's what I'm gonna say happened. I'm just gonna say they didn't take him, and that's why he doesn't remember. But yeah, I mean, it's when it comes to alien encounters, they're all pretty standard. Like, there aren't really that many that are like too kooky crazy, but it's a pretty simple one. So that's kind of all I got for you guys. It's, you know, it's pretty standard. I hope you guys enjoyed me rambling today about the Allagash abductions. Next week is going to be another Crypto Chats week, so hope you guys stick around. We're gonna talk about some weird cryptids and some other things that come out of my brain. We're just gonna see what happens. Yeah, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!